Hello everyone. It's needless to say the importance of getting the surface marking on neurosurgery right, because so many things depend on that, whether it is localizing your tumor rightly, whether it is localizing some of the normal structures like a sylvian fissure or motor cortex or central sulcus, etc. Or it may be useful in tapering your craniotomy to as minimal as possible instead of having unnecessarily large craniotomy. So when we talk about surface marking, the important thing that comes to our mind and which has been taught to us during residency is the Taylor Haughton line. So in this video, let's have a look at what that is, some of the important surface marking landmarks that we can see routinely in neurosurgery and which are very useful in our day-to-day practice. So I'll make use of this picture, which is basically, I hope the reflection is not a problem. Yeah, so as you can see here, few of the landmarks that you should be knowing is, one is obviously the nasion, which is here. Then you have the inion, which is the bone, which is the prominent bone which is overlying the torcula, and then sagittal suture, known to everybody. There is an important point called as frontozygomatic point or the frontozygomatic suture. What is it? So if you just palpate the zygoma, the horizontal aspect where it reaches the orbital bone, from there you have to take 2.5 centimeter above that. So from here it is 2.5 centimeter above. So this is the frontozygomatic suture, frontozygomatic point, which is a very important landmark. So let's come to our Taylor Haughton line. You say, for example, even in reality, if you can sort of make the patient sit up post induction and clip the hair completely, and you just mark nasion, then you mark inion, and then you take a flexible tape and measure the distance from nasion to the inion, and then mark 50% point of that and 75% point of that. That is half and 3/4. So mark these two things. You can see the nasion to inion line, 50% is here, 75% is here. Okay, so you do that. After that, what are you supposed to do? We talked about the frontozygomatic point. So it almost corresponds to lateral aspect of the lateral epicanthus. So from there you have to draw a line to the 75% point of the line, 75% point of the naso-inion line. So it goes something like this, that is from the frontozygomatic point to the 75% line. So this corresponds to sylvian fissure. So once you have the sylvian fissure, which is of course by itself a very important landmark, then let's try to mark the central sulcus. How do you do that? So for marking the central sulcus, you need to have the upper Rolandic point and the lower Rolandic point. Now what are these? So we had this naso-inion line, right? So and we had the 50% point in that. So mark that 50% point and go 2 centimeter behind that in the same line. So that is 50% plus 2. That forms your upper Rolandic point. Then take the horizontal aspect of this zygoma and on its upper part mark the midpoint. So on the upper edge you mark the midpoint of the zygoma. Now draw a line from midpoint of the zygoma to 50% plus 2 centimeter. So it looks something like this. You have 50% point here, 2 centimeter behind that, that is this point, and then you have the midpoint of the zygoma. So you draw a line, and obviously this line will intersect our previous line, that is of sylvian fissure. So the point at which it intersects the sylvian fissure line is the lower Rolandic point. And another way to mark the same is you have your sylvian fissure, and then you have to go in that line approximately 5.5 centimeter behind the frontozygomatic point. So from here it is 5.5 centimeter point. That also, I mean, obviously corresponds to the lower Rolandic point. And instead of having to mark on the zygoma, so from this line you can mark the lower Rolandic point and then join the upper Rolandic point and lower Rolandic point to get the central sulcus. Another important landmark is the pterion. So you have your frontozygomatic point. From there, in the sylvian fissure line, 3 centimeter behind that would be the pterion, and 5.5 centimeter behind that would be the lower Rolandic point. One more important plane that is talked about is the Frankfurt horizontal plane. So if you see this image at the point where it joins the orbit, the zygoma joins the orbit to upper part of the this meatus. So this is basically the Frankfurt horizontal plane. So this, even though it is actually, if you see, it is very simple, but for some reason we don't usually follow that, probably because we assume that it takes more time or whatever. But if you take little more effort and if we try to mark these things properly, it will overall make our life much easy while operating, because our craniotomy, our incision and everything would be so accurate that we won't really have to struggle much later because of the improper positioning of the craniotomy or inadequate size of the craniotomy. So I hope this short video about Taylor Haughton lines was useful to you and it was informative to you. If so, please like this video and subscribe to this channel for more such informative videos. Thank you for watching.